The warm chandeliers of the velvet-lined dining room shone brightly, but my hands were freezing as I gripped the velvet box inside my coat pocket. 5 years of saving every extra penny had finally come down to tonight. Then I saw her. Maya sat at a corner booth, laughing softly as Bradford Sterling poured her another glass of vintage wine. He leaned in close, brushing his fingers against her hand. My heart hammered against my ribs as I walked over to their table. Maya froze, her smile instantly vanishing as she turned toward me. Leo, what on earth are you doing here? I came to find you, I said, my voice shaking slightly as I pulled the velvet box from my pocket. We had dinner plans for our 5-year anniversary, Maya. You said you were working late on a project. Bradford let out a smooth, arrogant chuckle, leaning back in his leather chair. Is this the technician boyfriend you keep complaining about, Maya? Yes, Brad. I'm so sorry about this, Maya said, her cheeks turning bright red with embarrassment. She stood up, glaring at me with sharp, cold eyes. Leo, put that box away right now. You are making a complete scene in front of my boss. Making a scene? I asked, looking into the eyes of the woman I loved. Maya, I spent 6 months saving up for this ring. I came here to ask you to marry me. Maya threw her head back and laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that cut through me deeper than a blade. Marry you? On a technician's salary? I love you, Maya, I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I worked 16-hour shifts so we could buy a place together. That's your problem, Leo, she snapped loudly, gesturing toward the luxurious restaurant. You think working hard in a basement lab makes you special. Look around you. Brad has status, influence, and real wealth. Compared to him, you are completely useless. Useless, I repeated, staggering back an inch as if she had physically struck me. Maya, we've been together for 5 years. I built my entire life around you. And those 5 years were a waste of my time, she sneered, stepping closer to Brad's side. Brad promised me a corner office and a lifestyle you couldn't afford in 10 lifetimes. You're just a glorified worker bee, Leo. You will never amount to anything. Brad stood up, adjusting his silk tie, with a smug smirk on his face. He reached into his leather wallet, pulled out a crisp $100 bill, and tossed it onto my chest. The bill fluttered down, landing right beside my boots. Here's $100 for your trouble, kid, Brad said, his voice dripping with condescension. Take it and buy yourself a nice meal down at the diner. Now get out of here before I call restaurant security to drag you into the street. You don't have to call security, Brad, I said quietly, looking down at the $100 bill on the floor, then back at Maya's cold, unbothered face. I'm leaving. Good, Maya said, turning her back on me to take her seat again. Don't bother going back to the apartment tonight, Leo. I'll have my things moved out by morning. I turned around and walked out of the restaurant, my legs feeling like heavy lead. The heavy glass doors closed behind me, cutting off the soft piano music and warm golden light. Outside, the sky had broken open into a heavy, freezing downpour. I stepped out onto the slick marble plaza, rain soaking through my canvas jacket within seconds, washing over my face like bitter tears. I stood under the street lamp, staring blankly into the dark puddles at my feet. I reached into my pocket, my fingers brushing past the velvet ring box until they touched the folded piece of paper in my wallet. My original provisional patent registry confirmation for the microcell battery architecture. A sudden, sharp thought pierced through the numbness in my mind. Bradford Sterling was preparing to launch a $500 million corporate merger tomorrow, advertising his flagship product line as revolutionary. But every single blueprint, software line, and hardware code powering those microcell batteries didn't belong to Sterling Innovations. They were registered solely under my personal name, Harrison Vance's grandson. You think I'm useless, Maya? I whispered into the freezing rain, closing my fingers tightly around the patent receipt. You think Brad owns the world? I wiped the rainwater from my eyes and took a deep, clear breath. The heartbreak was still burning in my chest, but beneath it, a quiet, dangerous fire began to take hold. They thought I was just a nameless technician they could throw away into the mud. Tomorrow morning, they were going to find out who really owned the empire. The cold night air did nothing to dull the burning humiliation in my chest as I dragged my feet into my small, dark apartment. I dropped onto the edge of the sofa, staring blankly at the floor, my hands trembling uncontrollably. A loud, insistent knock rattled the front door. "Leo, open up!" Mac's voice boomed from the hallway. "I just saw the video some idiot posted online from the restaurant. Open this door right now." I stood up slowly and unlatched the deadbolt. Mac pushed past me, his leather briefcase in one hand and a bag of takeout in the other. He took one look at my face and let out a long, heavy curse. "It really happened, didn't it?" Mac asked, setting his bag down on the kitchen counter. "Maya actually stood there with Bradford Sterling while he had security toss you out." "She laughed at me, Mac," I said, my voice cracking as I slumped back onto the couch. "She called me useless. She told me 5 years of my life were worth nothing compared to Brad's money." "She is a blind, selfish fool," Mac said angrily, pulling a thick folder from his briefcase. "I brought your original filing documents from my office vault. We need to talk about your microcell battery architecture right now." "I don't care about the tech tonight, Mac," I muttered, burying my face in my hands. "My heart feels like it was ripped out of my chest." "You need to care, Leo," Mac shouted, sitting down directly across from me. "Listen to me. Brad's company is announcing a $500 million merger with Apex Global tomorrow based entirely on your battery design. But do you remember what we signed 3 years ago?" I looked up, frowning through my exhaustion. "What are you talking about?" "When you joined Sterling Innovations as a contractor, Brad tried to force you to sign an asset assignment contract," Mac explained, opening the folder and pointing at a blue highlighted clause. "I rejected it. I drafted an exclusive temporary licensing agreement instead." "You personally own those foundational patents, Leo. Sterling Innovations only holds a provisional license that can be revoked at any time." "Wait," I stammered, my heart racing as the legal reality sank in. "You're saying Brad doesn't own my battery tech? He doesn't own a single line of your code or hardware architecture?" Max said with a fierce grin. "If you revoke that license, Brad's company has 0 assets. His multi-million-dollar merger will collapse overnight." I sat in silence, torn between the deep ache of Maya's betrayal and the sudden power resting in my hands. "I need to visit my grandmother before I make any decisions," I whispered. "I need to hear her voice." An hour later, I sat in the cozy, warm living room of my grandmother Samantha's small brick house. She sat beside me on the worn armchair, holding a steaming cup of chamomile tea, her soft eyes filled with gentle wisdom as she listened to my story. "She broke your heart, my dear boy," Samantha said softly, reaching over to pat my trembling knee. "And that pain is real, but do not let her cruel words make you forget who you are." "She said I was useless, Grandma," I admitted, looking down at my calloused hands. "She said I would never amount to anything without Brad's influence." "Maya saw only the glitter of another man's gold," Samantha said firmly, her voice ringing with deep strength. "She was too blind to see the genius standing right in front of her. Your grandfather Harrison spent 30 years building the groundwork for those energy cells in his small garage. He passed that legacy to you because you have his brilliant mind and his honest heart. Brad is using Harrison's legacy to build his own empire," I said, a cold, sharp clarity settling over my mind. "Harrison Vance never allowed anyone to step on his dignity," Samantha reminded me, leaning forward with sharp, proud eyes. "He built his work on truth. If this man treated you like dirt and tried to steal your grandfather's life work, you have every right to stand up and reclaim what belongs to you." "I gave her 5 years of honest devotion, Grandma," I said quietly, feeling the heavy fog of heartbreak finally lift from my thoughts. "And she threw it away for fake status." "Then show them what your devotion was actually worth," Samantha said gently. "Do not act out of hatred, Leo. Act out of self-respect. Reclaim your name, reclaim your work, and let karma handle the rest." I stood up from the armchair, breathing in a deep, clean breath for the first time all night. The lingering shock and self-doubt were completely gone, replaced by a quiet, unshakable resolve. "Thank you, Grandma," I said, kissing her cheek softly. "I know exactly what I have to do now." I pulled out my phone and dialed Mac's number as I walked out toward my car. "Mac, get the revocation paperwork ready," I said into the receiver, my voice steady, cold, and clear. "We are pulling my patents first thing in the morning." The morning sunlight streamed into our shared apartment as the front door slammed open. Maya strutted inside, her high heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor as she carried two large, empty designer leather suitcases. "I see you didn't even bother to pack my clothes, Leo," she said, tossing the heavy suitcases onto the sofa with an annoyed sigh. "Typical. You always expect me to do all the work myself." "Good morning, Maya," I replied quietly, sitting at the small kitchen table with a cold mug of untouched coffee. "I assumed you were staying at Brad's luxury hotel suite." "I am," she sneered, pulling her expensive silk dresses from the hallway closet and dumping them carelessly into her open bags. "Brad rented the penthouse suite at the Grand Regency. It has marble floors, a private spa, and real class. Unlike this cramped, miserable apartment." "Then take whatever belongs to you and go," I said, keeping my tone entirely calm and devoid of anger. Maya stopped packing and turned around, glaring at me with deep contempt. "Look at you, sitting there like a beaten dog. You aren't even going to fight for me, are you?" "You made your choice very clear last night at the restaurant, Maya," I said softly, reaching into my jacket pocket. My fingers brushed against the velvet ring box. I pulled it out, looked at it briefly, and placed it safely back inside my pocket. "There is nothing left to fight for." "You are so pathetic," she yelled, slamming a suitcase zipper shut with violent force. "You think you're some kind of tragic victim, don't you? Let me tell you something, Leo. Without Brad's corporate umbrella, you are absolutely nothing. You're just a glorified technician who works 60 hours a week for basic scraps. Brad has actual vision. He's leading a $500 million merger today, while you'll be stuck in a basement lab forever." "Is that all you wanted to say, Maya?" I asked, looking her straight in the eye without flinching. "Or do you have more insults stored up?" "You will regret being so arrogant," she snapped, grabbing her heavy bags and rushing toward the doorway. "When Brad's company goes public and I'm driving a brand new luxury sports car, don't you dare call my phone begging for financial help or a second chance." "I promise you, Maya, I will never call you," I answered quietly. She slammed the front door behind her, the heavy vibration shaking the quiet apartment room. I let out a slow, steady breath, feeling a profound sense of peace and freedom wash over my mind. An hour later, I arrived at Mac's downtown law office. Mac was standing behind his mahogany desk, reviewing a stack of fresh legal forms with a wide grin on his face. "Did she take all her stuff?" Mac asked, handing me a heavy silver pen. "Every single designer bag," I said, sitting down across from him. "She told me I'll be stuck in a basement lab forever while Brad leads his $500 million merger. The irony is going to hit her like a runaway train." Mac chuckled, pulling up the Federal Patent Registry portal on his computer monitor. "Are you completely ready to press the final button, Leo? Once we transmit this legal filing, Sterling Innovations instantly loses all rights to your microcell battery architecture." "Do it without hesitation," I said firmly. "They built their entire corporate evaluation on my hard work without ever offering me a real contract or ownership stake. Brad treated my late grandfather Harrison's legacy like his personal property." "Notice of total patent license revocation submitted," Mac declared, clicking his mouse with a sharp, satisfying sound. "It is officially stamped and filed with the federal government portal. Automated digital copies have just been delivered directly to the corporate inbox of Sterling Innovations and the Board of Auditors." "How long until Brad realizes what happened?" I asked, watching the green confirmation icon flash on the screen. "The moment his engineering team tries to run the system validation tests for the pre-merger demo," Mac explained, leaning back in his executive chair. "Within 2 hours, every single server running your proprietary battery software will automatically lock down." "What if Brad tries to claim we acted in bad faith?" I asked, leaning forward. "He can claim whatever he wants in public," Mac laughed, shaking his head. "In court, land titles and registered patent deeds are all that matter. And your name is on every single master document." Meanwhile, across town at the Grand Hotel Convention Center, Bradford Sterling stood in front of a massive digital screen, adjusting his silk tie for his afternoon press conference. A crowd of reporters and private equity investors filled the auditorium. waiting for the formal announcement of the $500 million merger between Sterling Innovations and Apex Global. Maya stood near the front row, holding a glass of expensive champagne and smiling proudly as Brad flashed his dazzling, confident smile at the flashing news cameras. "Ladies and gentlemen," Brad announced into the microphone, his booming voice echoing off the high walls. "Today, Sterling Innovations changes the world forever. We are officially signing our landmark merger, backed by our revolutionary, proprietary microcell battery architecture." The room erupted into loud applause. Brad beamed with immense pride, waving to the investors, completely unaware that our legal trap had already sprung, and the ground beneath his feet was about to collapse entirely. My phone buzzed continuously on Mac's glass desk, filling the quiet office with vibrating hums. I picked up the smartphone and saw Maya's contact photo flashing for the 6th time in less than an hour. "Are you going to answer her, Leo?" Mac asked, setting down 2 steaming mugs of black coffee. "Her name has been blowing up your screen since 8 this morning." I pressed the green button and raised the phone to my ear. "Hello, Maya." "Leo." Finally, Maya shrieked through the speaker, her voice shrill and trembling with annoyance. "What on earth is going on with the central server at Sterling Innovations?" The chief engineer just stormed into Brad's office, screaming that our core software and battery hardware access codes were wiped from the federal database. "That wasn't a server error, Maya," I replied smoothly, leaning back in my leather chair. "Don't lie to me, Leo," she snapped, loud enough for Mac to hear clearly across the room. "I know how careless you get with filing technical documentation. You must have messed up the system upload during your shift yesterday." Brad is furious. His investors are arriving in 2 hours for the pre-merger review, and the entire engineering portal is completely locked down. "I didn't mess up any filing, Maya," I said, keeping my tone steady and calm. "The system is locked because the patent licensing agreements were officially revoked at midnight." "Revoked?" Maya let out a forced, bitter laugh. "Stop making up ridiculous stories. You are just a mid-level technician who handles basic code updates. You don't have the authority to revoke anything. Fix this system glitch right now before Brad sues you into total poverty." "I'm not fixing anything, Maya," I said softly. "Tell Brad to check his official legal inbox." Before she could yell again, I ended the call and placed the phone face down on the desk. "She genuinely thinks you are just a confused worker who deleted a file," Mac chuckled, shaking his head. "She has no idea that you are the sole inventor holding the master keys. She refused to see who I really was for 5 years," I said quietly. "What did Brad send to my email?" Mac turned his laptop screen toward me. A formal notice from Brad's lead corporate attorney. "Look at this aggressive garbage." I leaned forward and read the bold text printed across the top of the letterhead. "Notice of immediate legal action and retroactive IP assignment demand," I read aloud. "He is claiming that any invention developed during our relationship automatically belongs to Sterling Innovations under an implied corporate covenant." "It is a pure bluff," Mac said, clicking his metal pen against the glass table. "He knows he has zero legal standing in any court. He is desperately trying to intimidate you into signing a retroactive transfer before the private equity audit board completes their morning review." My personal tablet chimed with an incoming encrypted video call. The digital screen displayed the name of my uncle, Raymond Vance. I tapped the blue icon to accept the secure connection. "Good morning, Leo." Uncle Raymond's deep, booming voice echoed through the speaker. "I just received the automated alert from our family trust's legal monitors. Is Bradford Sterling trying to bully my nephew over my late brother's energy patents?" "He sent a legal threat 30 minutes ago, Uncle Raymond," I said, showing him the document. "He is trying to force a retroactive asset's signature. That arrogant thief will not touch a single line of your code," Uncle Raymond declared firmly. "Our family trust fund has allocated $5 million directly to Mac's firm. Tell Brad's attorneys that if they want to fight us in federal court, Vance Legal Holdings will bankrupt his company before the first court hearing." "Thank you, Uncle Raymond," I said, feeling a deep surge of confidence. "We will not let him steal Harrison's legacy." "Keep your head high, son," Raymond smiled before disconnecting the line. Mac immediately dialed a direct number on his office desk phone and put it on speaker. After 3 rings, A sharp, authoritative female voice answered. Director Evelyn Rhodes speaking, she announced briskly. Director Rhodes, this is Sam McIntyre, Chief Counsel for Vance IP Holdings, Max said cleanly. I am calling regarding the merger between Sterling Innovations and Apex Global. Ah, Mr. McIntyre, Evelyn said, her tone suddenly cautious. I received your official notice of patent revocation 15 minutes ago. Is this documentation fully verified by the Federal Registry? Every single patent listed in Sterling Innovations prospectus is registered under Leo Vance's personal trust, Max stated clearly. Bradford Sterling has 0 ownership, 0 transfer deeds, and 0 licensing rights as of midnight. This is a massive compliance violation, Director Rhodes declared coldly. Sterling Innovations claimed full, unencumbered ownership of those battery patents in their financial audit files, which constitutes material fraud. I added, speaking directly into the speakerphone. I am Leo Vance, Director Rhodes. I have not signed any asset transfer, and I will not be granting any future licenses to Bradford Sterling. Understood, Mr. Vance, Evelyn replied without hesitation. As lead auditor for the equity board, I am issuing an immediate halt on all merger proceedings. We are freezing the escrow accounts and summoning Bradford Sterling to an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. Thank you, Director Rhodes, I said calmly. The house of cards was falling down fast. Stand still for one more minute, Leo, Max said, pulling the cloth tape measure across my shoulders inside the private fitting suite at Vance Tower. If you're going to walk into that boardroom tomorrow as the head of this company, you need to look like you own the building, not like you spent the night sleeping under a workshop bench. I am used to worn denim and steel-toed boots, Mac, I said, staring at my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. The tailor adjusted the sleeve of my dark charcoal suit jacket. It feels surreal to wear something that costs more than my first car. Get used to it. Mac chuckled, handing his card to the tailor, who bowed and stepped out. You designed the core energy technology that powers this market. It is time your appearance matched your mind. Besides, Bradford Sterling operates on corporate optics. When he steps into that room tomorrow and sees you looking like a powerhouse, his artificial confidence will shatter before we open the legal portfolios. Max sat down in a leather armchair, resting his tablet on the glass coffee table between us. Speaking of Brad, my legal team confirmed that 3 of his main corporate credit lines were frozen 2 hours ago. The auditors noticed the heavy red flags on the patent registry. How is he handling the pressure? I asked, checking the fit of my white French cuffs. He is panicking behind closed doors. Max smiled grimly. He attempted to host a lavish dinner last night to reassure his investors, but his corporate card was rejected at the door. An associate said Brad threw a tantrum, smashed an award, and spent 20 minutes screaming at staff. And how is Maya taking all of this? I asked quietly, a brief shadow of my past 5 years passing through my thoughts. She was standing right next to him, Max said, his tone turning colder. Apparently, she tried to calm him down, and Brad turned around and degraded her in front of his entire executive team. He shouted that she was useless if she couldn't force her ex-boyfriend to answer a call. Right on cue, my personal smartphone began to buzz aggressively on the table. The digital display flashed Maya's name across the screen. Speak of the devil, Mac murmured, leaning back with a raised eyebrow. Are you going to pick that up? I picked up the phone, swiped the screen, and placed the call directly on speaker. What do you want, Maya? I asked, keeping my tone smooth and distant. Leo, Maya's voice burst frantically through the speaker, laced with panic. Leo, thank God you finally answered. Where have you been? Why haven't you answered my messages? I have been busy, Maya, I replied. State your business. You need to come down to Sterling Innovations right now and fix this, she pleaded desperately. In the background, shouting and slamming doors echoed down the line. Brad's harsh voice boomed through the receiver. Asterisk, who are you talking to on the phone, Maya? Tell that engineer to get over here and sign the patent forms, or I will destroy his life. Asterisk. Maya cupped her hand over her microphone, her voice trembling violently. Leo, please listen to me. Brad is losing his mind. He is screaming at everyone in the building. The private equity board called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Brad says if you don't sign a transfer today, both our futures are ruined. His future might be ruined, Maya, I answered steadily. Mine is doing exceptionally well. Leo, stop playing these immature games, she cried out, her voice cracking under stress. You are acting like a totally different person. You are being cold and cruel. Brad is a wealthy man under extreme stress because of this paperwork glitch. Just come over here, sign the paper, and let us get past this drama. It was never a glitch, Maya, I said, looking at my refined reflection in the mirror. I legally revoked my patents because they belong to my family trust, not Brad. And Brad is not a powerful man. He is a fraud who built a fake reputation on technology he stole from me. That is not true, she shouted back, though her conviction sounded hollow. He promised me a life of wealth and luxury, Leo. He promised me high society. You cannot just destroy everything because your ego got hurt when I left you. You threw away 5 years of genuine devotion for a man who degrades you the moment his stolen money runs dry. I said quietly. I will see you in the boardroom tomorrow morning, Maya. Leo, wait. Do not hang up on. I pressed the red icon on the screen, ending the call instantly, and placed the phone back onto the glass table. Mac let out a long whistle. She genuinely still has no idea. Does she? She still believes Brad holds all the power. She chose to chase a glittering lie, I said, buttoning my dark suit jacket and standing tall. The insecure engineer who let people push him around was gone forever. The trap is set, Mac said, picking up his leather portfolio filled with original title deeds. Director Evelyn Rhodes and the audit committee will be waiting at 9 sharp. Then let us not keep them waiting, I replied with a calm, confident smile. Tomorrow morning, Bradford Sterling's house of cards collapses for good. The glass doors of the main boardroom in Vance Tower clicked open, and I watched through the dark smart glass partition as Brad, Maya, and 3 corporate lawyers entered. Brad adjusted his designer silk tie, smirking arrogance covering up his underlying anxiety. Maya walked beside him in a sharp dress, looking around the room as if she already owned it. Just let our legal team do the talking, Maya, Brad said loudly, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. This engineer is trying to play hardball to squeeze cash out of us. Once we show him our lawsuit threat, he'll fold like a lawn chair. I hope so, Brad, Maya replied, adjusting her hair in her compact mirror. Leo is so unassertive. He gets terrified the moment lawyers get involved. I can't believe he's delaying our $500 million deal over a stupid technicality. He's a nobody, babe, Brad sneered, taking a seat at the wide mahogany conference table. He'll sign the patent release forms today, or we'll ruin him financially. The side door opened, and Mac walked into the boardroom carrying a thick stack of blue legal portfolios. Right behind him stepped Director Evelyn Rhodes, the lead auditor for the private equity merger board. Good morning, everyone, Evelyn announced coldly, taking her seat at the center of the table. We are here to resolve the critical IP title block on Sterling Innovations. Thank you, Director Rhodes. Brad spoke up immediately, flashing a confident smile. My team is ready to present the merger documents. The missing patent assignment is just an administrative error caused by a former disgruntled contractor named Leo Vance. Is that so? Evelyn asked, raising an eyebrow. Before we review your filings, the owner of the foundational microcell battery patents would like to make his official statement. Where is he? Brad demanded, glancing toward the door with an annoyed sigh. Let's get this beggar in here so my lawyers can wrap this up. The double doors swung wide, and I stepped into the boardroom. I wore a charcoal bespoke suit, tailored to perfection, with a silk tie resting against my crisp white collar. I held my head high, walking with calm, absolute authority. The room fell completely silent. Maya gasped, dropping her compact mirror onto the polished table, where it shattered instantly. Her jaw dropped in total, unadulterated shock. Leo? Brad jumped out of his leather chair, pointing a trembling, furious finger directly at my face. What the hell is this? What is this pathetic loser doing here in a luxury suit? Security, get this clown out of our merger meeting. Sit down, Mr. Sterling, Evelyn commanded, her sharp voice cutting through the room like a steel blade. You are addressing the founder and primary patent owner of Vance Technologies. Founder. Maya shrieked, her voice cracking in pure panic as her eyes darted between me and the executive seat. That's impossible. Leo works in a lab. He's just a mid-level technician. I walked calmly to the head of the mahogany table, pulling out the main leather executive chair right next to Evelyn and Mac, and sat down. I rested my forearms on the table, locking eyes with Maya's pale, trembling face. I used to work in a lab, Maya, I said softly, my voice smooth and unbothered. Until I pulled the battery architecture patents that I personally invented, filed, and paid for long before I ever met Brad. You own the battery tech? Brad stammered, his face draining of all color as he slumped back into his seat. No, that's a lie. Sterling Innovations owns those files. You licensed them temporarily under a provisional agreement, Brad. Mac interrupted sharply, opening a legal binder. An agreement that Leo revoked 48 hours ago due to material breach of contract. Sterling Innovations owns 0% of the core energy architecture. Director Rhodes, Brad pleaded frantically, sweat pouring down his forehead as he turned toward Evelyn. This is a setup. We can renegotiate terms. We can buy the patents today. There is nothing to buy, Mr. Sterling, Evelyn stated with cold precision. Our audit team has reviewed the original government registry. Without Leo Vance's personal patents, Sterling Innovations possesses no commercial technology, no viable products, and zero net worth. What? Maya gasped, her voice trembling violently as she turned to Brad. Brad, what is she talking about? The $500 million merger is formally canceled, Evelyn declared, slamming her ledger shut. Furthermore, because you filed loan applications listing Mr. Vance's stolen patents as corporate assets, I am submitting this file directly to federal fraud investigators. Canceled? Brad yelled, burying his face in his hands as his legal team scrambled to pack their files in sheer panic. I'm ruined. I'm completely ruined. Maya stared at Brad in utter terror, watching her wealthy benefactor collapse into a panicking mess. Then, slowly, she turned her eyes back to me. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The man she had dumped, mocked, and called useless was the sole master of the entire technology empire. Leo, Maya whimpered, tears spilling down her pale cheeks as she took a desperate step toward my side of the table. Leo, please. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I know you didn't, Maya, I replied calmly, rising from my executive chair and smoothing my suit jacket. You only looked at the cover, not the worth inside. I turned my back on her weeping and walked out of the boardroom into my future. The polished marble floor of the Vance Technologies glass lobby reflected the soft glow of the evening lights. Rain tapped quietly against the tall windows. As I stepped out of the private elevator in my fitted suit, a familiar figure rushed forward from the waiting area. Leo, Maya cried out, her voice raw and breaking. She looked completely exhausted. The designer dress she wore was crumpled. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her mascara was smudged down her pale cheeks. She stumbled over her heels, stopping just 2 feet away from me. You shouldn't be here, Maya, I said calmly, keeping my hands resting casually in my pockets. Please, Leo, don't turn away from me, she begged, clasping her trembling hands together. I've been waiting in this lobby for 4 hours just to see you. You have to listen to me. There is nothing left for us to discuss, I replied, my voice steady and unbothered. The board meeting ended hours ago. Brad's firm is officially going into liquidation. I don't care about Brad, Maya sobbed, tears streaming freely down her face. Brad is a monster. The moment the merger fell through and the auditors called the police, he screamed at me and blamed me for everything. He froze my corporate card and left me stranded with thousands of dollars in venue deposits. You chose him, Maya, I reminded her softly. You stood in that restaurant and told me I was useless compared to his money. I was stupid, she screamed softly, taking a desperate step closer. Brad manipulated me. Leo, he fed my ambition and made me feel like I was missing out on the world. I was confused, but I never stopped loving you. Please, we can start over. We can go back to our old life. Our old life is gone. I said, looking into her frantic eyes. And I am not the naive man who stayed up all night worrying if I was good enough for you. Leo, please. Maya dropped to her knees right on the marble floor, sobbing hysterically as she grabbed the edge of my coat. I'll do anything. I'll work for free. I'll help you clean the lab. Just don't throw 5 years of our lives away. I gently reached down and pried her fingers off my coat, stepping back to create distance. Reaching into my inner pocket, I pulled out the small velvet engagement ring box, the exact one I had held in the restaurant the night she humiliated me. What is that? Maya gasped, staring at the box with wide, trembling eyes. This is the ring I bought for you, I said softly, crouching down so I was eye level with her. I spent 6 months saving up for this because I wanted to build a real family with you. I loved you for who you were, not for what you could give me. Leo, she whispered, reaching out a trembling hand. I placed the velvet box into her palm and gently closed her fingers around it. Keep it, I said quietly. Sell it to pay off your apartment debt, or keep it as a reminder. Let it remind you that real devotion cannot be traded for a fancy title or a rich boss's promise. Don't leave me, Leo, she cried out, her shoulders shaking violently as fresh tears poured down her face. Please. Goodbye, Maya, I said. I stood up, turned my back on her weeping, and walked steadily toward the private garage doors where my driver was waiting. I didn't look back once. An hour later, the rain stopped, leaving the night sky crisp and filled with clear city lights. I stood on the expansive glass balcony of my new penthouse office on the top floor of Vance Tower, breathing in the cool night air. The glass door behind me slid open, and my grandmother, Samantha, stepped out onto the patio, wrapping a knitted shawl tight around her shoulders. Beside her, Mac walked out holding 3 glasses of sparkling apple cider, a massive grin plastered across his face. The news just broke on the business channel, Leo, Mac said loudly, handing me a glass. Sterling Innovations has officially filed for bankruptcy, and Brad is facing 3 counts of fraud for listing stolen patents as collateral. He's finished. Justice always catches up to pride, my boy, Samantha said gently, resting a warm, comforting hand on my arm. Your grandfather would be so proud to see you standing here today, Leo. You fought for his legacy without losing your soul. I couldn't have done any of it without you too, I said, looking from my grandmother to Mac with genuine gratitude. For a moment, in that restaurant, I really believed I was useless. You were never useless, Leo, Mac said firmly, clinking his glass against mine. You were just giving your genius to people who didn't deserve it. To Vance Technologies. To Vance Technologies, Samantha echoed with a proud smile. To the future, I corrected, clinking my glass against theirs as I looked out over the glowing Chicago skyline. The heartbreak, the humiliation, and the doubt were completely gone. Standing high above the city, I finally knew my true worth, ready to build a life founded on truth, self-respect, and unshakable pride.